This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And I know I promised that Steph Young was going to return to the show tonight, but Steph is a little bit under the weather. And we were doing this show here anyway, so this is now the show that you're hearing, which is going to be later in the week. And I'm here with Cherylee Black.
Hi there.
And Timothy Renner.
Great to be back.
And Steph will be on next week once she's feeling a little bit better. And tonight, however, we're going to go over some more of these listener stories. And as I was sorting through some of these tonight, I felt like an absolute jerk because I found at least one email that somebody had written me wanting to talk to me about their experiences from 2 years ago that I never responded to.
I'm going to go ahead and come to your defense here and explain to people how difficult it is to keep up with listener emails.
Yeah,
because we get them multiple locations.
Yes,
we get We get them through our emails. We get them through Facebook. We get them through Twitter if you're on there. Like I get them through Instagram now. They just come from all these, and you forget where you were talking to people.
Yes.
So we don't do that on purpose.
That and I'm handling numerous radio shows plus a business, and I'll get stuff and I'll go, oh, I got to respond to this, and then it's just out of mind, and the next thing I know, I have 10 other emails in that folder, and things get lost.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I don't know about you, but I spend before I go to bed every night. It's usually 2 hours just answering email for the podcast alone, between an hour and 2 hours.
I do it at miscellaneous times. Whenever I can have a few minutes. But like tonight, when I was sitting down trying to find some stories here that we're going to go through, some of them are new that people just sent us, and some of them are from years ago. And our Scottish friend that was on last week, that was something he originally sent me 2 years ago that I had read, went, this is really interesting, and never got back to him. But luckily he was still listening and still, we got him to come on, and he was a blast.
Yeah, most people understand too. That's the other thing. They very much understand that things can get lost in the shuffle. But I'd like to let people know that we don't do it on purpose.
Yeah. Well, I heard you on a recent episode of Strange Familiar say that you sometimes it's okay to poke you to remind you, and I say the same thing. If you haven't heard back from me, I'm likely not ignoring you. Yeah. It's just that it's slipped through the cracks. Yeah,
exactly. I never mind being reminded. I'm not offended by that.
There's a few where I'm going, oh, I have no idea what to say to this one, but that's very rare.
Yeah, I got a message like that on Facebook last week. It was about 2 hours of constant Facebook messages, and I had no clue how to reply.
Well, it happens. But if I haven't responded to you, and that person, when I found that email, I immediately responded to them and apologized for taking so long to get back to them.
Yeah, I've had to read a couple of those.
I do usually read them. It's just I don't always get back to them because, like I said, I'll read it and I'll say, okay, I'm going to answer this later, and then it just slips through the cracks and gets buried into other stuff. So we're going to start with a story from Kerry. This one only dates back to January of this year. We're doing good so far on some of these. And she said she had just listened to the January 23rd episode, and some of her experiences were similar, so she wanted to write. She says, when I was a small girl, under 7, I lived in Tacoma, Washington. I regularly had shadow figures in my room. I remember one in particular very clearly because I could see the outline of his cloak, and he wore a Robin Hood type hat. It had a feather that stuck far off in the back. He was black, but I could tell from the outline. He would move around my room like he was looking for something. He seemed aware that I was there, but he really seemed interested in finding something. Of course, nobody believed me, but my mom was a sympathetic soul and would let me sleep on the floor of her room. That sounds like a kid seeing a shadow person.
Yeah.
And the Robin Hood thing's a little odd, but why not?
Yeah, was it on your show or mine? See, now I'm getting our shows confused. Where someone else talked about a feather in a hat, like that.
I don't think it was mine.
I know somewhere that's come up somewhat recently. So,
and if these things, what was that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that it kind of reminds me. I remember Lloyd Auerbach talking a story about a family who kept seeing, and everyone in the family was seeing this. It was like a black night. Huh. And which, I mean, in California, there's no historical precedent for this. And they just figured that it was kind of, like a dream figure almost from some of the issues, one of the kids was having problems. Yeah. And it kind of manifested itself as this black night. So, maybe the Robin Hood character represents something.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she was under 7, so. All right. So she says, we moved from Tacoma to Oregon when I was 7 and bought a new house. I don't remember anything happening there. When I was 11, my dad decided we needed to be moving up in the world. We bought a ranch-style house, about 25 years old at the time, from the house's original owners on a quiet, nice street in Oregon. The couple we bought it from was a Japanese couple, and they kept the house immaculate. At one point, the wife had a nervous breakdown from trying to keep the house tidy enough. My room was painted a glaring orange. Even the carpet was orange. The rest of the house was painted in normal colors like light blue or beige. When I was about 12 to 13, I had a friend spend the night. I remember us packing up her stuff to go home. I was going to help her carry her stuff about 3 blocks away. I don't remember anything else about the day. Apparently, I did help her carry her stuff home, though I don't remember it. Then I was gone for hours. My family had been searching for me all day. I don't know where I went that day. I don't remember anything. I woke up the next day in my bed. My mom asked me if I remembered anything, and I didn't. They wondered if I had taken my friend's asthma meds or something, but why would I do that? My mom said they had searched for me all day, and I had finally wandered home in the evening, collapsed on the lawn, and said, I've been to the bottom, and I've come back to the top. I have no idea what that meant, and I don't know where I was.
Wow. Was there a bear with her? No, that's amazing, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like something that someone might say if they were drunk or, I don't know, maybe tripping or something. But you would think she would know if something like that was going on. She would still have some memory of it.
Well, how old was she?
12 to 13.
And what's the quote again? I've been to the bottom.
I've been to the bottom and I've come back to the top.
Wow.
It sounds very deep.
Yeah. It's just one of those weird, phrases that come out of these things.
Yeah. So she continues. We had a lot of activity in that house. At first, there was thumping that would start at the bedroom end of the house and continue forward. My dad said he thought we had a poltergeist. It progressed to other things, especially a radio that would turn on or off, or on and off, or the volume would go up and down. As time went on, things got very dark. I had sleep paralysis and constant nightmares. When you guys were talking about the wrestling and fighting in your sleep and thinking that you had finally woken up, but you really didn't, by the time I was 15, that was the way every night was in that house. I would have dreams about the entity lifting me out of my bed and carrying me to the garage and slamming my head against the floor. I would feel like it was trying to strangle me. I spent every night being afraid to go to sleep. I had hung a cross over my door, a Bible under my pillow, and always slept with my dog. Now, with her age and this stuff seeming to focus on her, I would think that poltergeist activity was probably in some degree coming from her.
Yeah.
Yep.
It says, my little sister went through an intense time of darkness. When she was 13, she got into Ouija boards. I was afraid of them and wouldn't go near them, but one night she had friends over and they were doing it, and curiosity got the better of me, so I joined them. We talked to the spirit of the house. It said it hated me, but it liked my room because it was the messiest in the house. This was true. I could never get my room clean. I would try and then get confused, or I would start and then come home and things would be scattered around. It was a complete mess. We were also into metal, and we were really into Randy Rhoads, who was a guitarist for Ozzy, who had passed away by this time. We talked to supposedly his spirit. Some other stuff happened until it just kept saying, ha, 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 and then my sister's friend got mad and broke the board all up. We threw it in a field some blocks from her house. My sister and I were on the swim team. The next day, we came home from practice in the evening. My mom had been with us at practice, and nobody else had been home. I went to my room and changed, and my sister started freaking out. I ran to her room to see what was up. All her Randy Rhoads posters had been ripped off her wall and were on the floor. Our rooms were basically wallpapered with posters of people like Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, Tony Iommi, people they made centerfolds of in Guitar Magazine, or pages we ripped out of Rolling Stone. On one of the posters was written in a creepy handwriting, "Ha ha, Eli." My sister's name was Ellie. So that's bizarre.
Yeah, that's creepy stuff.
That is, but girls of that age, I mean, especially sisters do not. I mean, I grew up with brothers, but I mean, I had friends with sisters, and sisters do mean things to each other at that age. I mean,
but it seems like it was just the two of them, and it doesn't sound like she did it to her sister, and I doubt her sister would have done it to herself.
No. But I'm saying if it's poltergeist activity, because they're girls of that age. I mean, I can tell you, at that age, I did the sleepovers where we'd all do the Ouija board stuff, because that's what you do at sleepovers, or you do the thing where you send your friend into the bathroom to look in the mirror in the dark and look for Bloody Mary.
Right.
I mean, little girls are just awful to each other. And I just can remember one time when we were playing with a Ouija board, and my friend beside me told me beforehand that she was going to let go of my hand at one point and then tap the piano behind us and then hang onto my hand again. And we were both going to tell everybody that we were holding hands like we were all supposed to be doing when the piano made the sound. And after that, because of course, as soon as the piano was touched, everyone started screaming. But after that, real things started to move in the room. And that's, and that's actually been studied by parapsychologists. I think it was Kenneth Batchelor. It was like, once you get it started, even if you get it started kind of by having somebody cheat a little bit, then you start provoking real
responses.
Real psychokinesis. And so, like I said, little girls that age, I think, are kind of primed for this kind of stuff. So yeah, if little girls are fighting, it doesn't surprise me that the sisters' posters might get ripped off the walls. Ha ha, sister. But it wasn't me that did it.
But it doesn't sound like they were fighting, though.
Yeah.
Other than just general sisterly rivalry, I would think that would be there all the time.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what it is. Girls that age, oh my gosh, they're horrible to each other. Even just are.
Okay, so then she continues, when I was 16, my mother developed full-blown schizophrenia.
Oh.
Things at home got worse and worse. I had the same boyfriend all my teenage life. I just stopped coming home and always stayed at his house. I never had sleep paralysis anywhere but in that house, as in the one she was living in. The thing about the woman who lived there before that had the nervous breakdown about being able to keep the house clean, and then I could never keep my room clean. And then my sister also developed OCD and went into counseling over it, over keeping her house clean. It just strikes me as interesting. Years later, I graduated in 1986. When Facebook came around, me and my sister were talking on her wall about how weird that house was. Suddenly, so many friends came on and talked about having horrible nightmares in that house, or how they were in the bathroom and the radio would go on and off, or how they heard footsteps, etc. I never knew how many other people had experiences in that house. The only people I talked to about it were my boyfriend and we still talk all these years later. He says he never really knew how much it was all affecting me, but he knew I was having terrible nightmares. When I moved out completely, I was afraid the spirit would follow me, but I've only had a couple brief sleep paralysis episodes since then. I have had many other things happen, mostly in the night, so people might blow them off. But I have had so many hag dreams, black dogs, apparitions, etc., that my family waits for the second scream to check on me. I live in Oregon City, which is the oldest incorporated city west of the Mississippi and at the end of the Oregon Trail. The whole town is haunted. We have a little girl in our house who stares at you in your sleep sometimes. My daughter saw a UFO in our neighbor's yard. My older daughter saw John McLaughlin walking his dog one night, the founder of our town. She didn't know who it was, but she described him to me, so I searched ghosts in our town and found out that this is something that people see, but apparently it only began when they had to move his grave. One day, my older teenage son and I were walking home. We were walking past the high school football field. It was quiet, chilly fall day, and nobody was around. All of a sudden, the stadium broke into a cheer, like a major touchdown had been scored. We just stood there and stared. I kept waiting for my hearing to clarify, like when something starts out like something weird, but then you realize it's a train or something. But it stayed like a cheer. And when it faded away, he just looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, that was weird." And that was all there was to say. My younger sons have also seen an old man in the basement, and I had an older woman walk into their room and then walk back out. I finally realized the spirits that scared me in the night were actually feeding off my screams. I have been working on having more self-control. So just last week, one zoomed down on my face in the night, and I was so proud of myself because I choked back the scream and was like, "Yeah, whatever, I'm so done with you." And he faded, and I went right back to sleep. But none of the spirits I've encountered have been so frothing with hatred like that one in the house during my teen years.
You know, it makes me think like when you're young and you get kind of opened up to the experiences, and it could be that there are definitely places where that kind of thing is just more able to happen, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And that, once you get opened up, it's almost like this negative feedback loop when you're afraid. Because I know I went through similar things because I get afraid, and then the experiences would get scarier and scarier. And then at some point you kind of have to stop being afraid and just say, okay, I'm interacting with something. I don't know what it is. But if it's communicating with you and that's what you get is fear, then it's almost like it goes, yeah, well, the human understands fear. We can work with this.
Yeah, or it just feeds back to you.
Yeah. And like my heart really goes out to people who are going through that, because it's just, it's sad, and there's, not a lot of, like, nobody wants to talk about it. Like, when she found out that all of these friends had scary experiences in this house,
mm-hmm.
And so clearly something was there that was kind of feeding off it, and then they were feeding into it,
Yeah. Yeah. And the cleaning thing, the room always being messy and the other woman breaking down about, not being able to keep the house clean. That's odd. I've never heard of that one before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird that the spirit said he liked her room because it was messy.
Yeah.
And then you sort of project, like, was that woman keeping the whole house clean because the spirit liked messy places?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And just because poltergeists, and when I used to just kind of feel like, okay, so poltergeists come from us. And I think it was Red Pill who said, well, even if they come from us, it doesn't mean that there's not something else there kind of using that energy.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just, for some reason, I had never thought about it that way. And it's a very good point. I mean, if there is a spirit in the house or something, or the house is a spirit of itself in some way, it could have very well leached onto their energy. I mean, they were at the right age to create poltergeist phenomena.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, and like I was having kind of an online discussion today with somebody about, like they asked me if I believed in demons, and I said, well, first off, you have to figure out how are we going to define demons? Because, one person's demon could be the other person's gray alien. Like,
right.
It's a context thing and what language you're going to use for this. And the other, and I said, I believe people have experiences of demons, but I don't really know, are the demons separate from us, a part of us? Like, are we creating demons? Could we create a demon that could affect somebody else? And the other thing is, how do we know that the demons aren't affecting, like, what if they're creating us?
I can help you with this.
Yeah.
I can help you with this. I can give you a key. Everything is demons.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, it seems like so much of this stuff is at very least co-created by us.
Yeah.
In the way it responds. And it may be an external force, it may not. And I think people get disappointed when you say, well, maybe it's entirely us in some way. But the very idea that we could create something like this is astounding.
Yeah.
It's the very idea that we could co-create something like this is astounding, because it says how little of what we are we really understand.
And you should have heard me today try to explain this to a local newspaper guy who called me to talk about Bigfoot, and I could tell he wanted a big ape in the woods story. And right. I'm giving him the whole thing. Like, no, this is not going to be easy to write about. Like, my thoughts on this aren't going to be easy to write about, and they're not going to be, headline material. I don't think it's a lot more to this. And to try to explain these ideas of co-creation, and then that I do think they're physical things when people see them, when they're there, but they're not, just an ape. And it was like, I could tell it was just, he was not having it.
Tammy just wanted a simple Bigfoot story. Why do you got to be so difficult?
Yeah, well, he came to the wrong guy.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
I was just going to say, though, because it's kind of interesting. I kind of think of all of these experiences as like it, poltergeists. At one time, the parapsychologist said that poltergeists were caused by a poltergeist agent, sort of suggesting it was just one person in the household doing it. And I don't think it's just necessarily one person, because it's one person within a family, within a community, within a particular place. I mean, it's a whole recipe of factors that create something.
Oh, yeah. And these two sisters could have been like multiplying this energy, back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I fully agree with that. So this next one is anonymous. But this is a story as he said, he wants to keep it to the paranormal side. It's a story about how his house got robbed. And he said, the day did not feel right. It was undoubtedly a liminal day, as I was working from home rather than the office. I don't even work from home when I want to get out of the office, but things were changing where I work, and there would be less time in traffic in the office. So I go through my morning routine and get my youngest son to school and head home. I get into some discussion with my wife and get to work. Since I am home, I have some errands to run. I complete the first set, and I'm almost done, but have to head back home. All is quiet. I get ready for the next assignment of tasks, and everything seems to be taking longer, but finally I'm ready and get that set of errands done too. As I'm heading back, I don't feel right. So I get back to the house and open the garage. Something makes me pause. Something feels off. However, I just drag myself through the big door anyway. As I'm trying to get to the garage's inner door, I feel something move past me. I feel like the inner door is already open and something is sliding past me, like a big thing, blob, snake, worm. I'm opening the door and I can feel something pressing against my right side, and I hear, "Don't look. You don't need to see this. Pay no heed. Just go through the door." So I finally get inside and I notice something is not quite right. I put down the loaf of bread and go to the back entry and part of the way to the living room and notice the TV is gone. A few other items are missing: the PS4, my wife's jewelry and photos, a few gadgets. What is scaring me is that thing in the garage and how much they left behind. Much to be thankful for, but still creepy. My youngest says the front door and the garage both smell strange, but can't place the smell. Thoughts?
I so did he felt something but didn't see it.
Right. Yeah, he felt something move past him, and he said, yeah, he felt something move past him, but he never actually saw it. And it literally told him, don't look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's bizarre. Like, what does this thing need with the TV set?
Yeah.
I mean, it does remind me in a way of. So I had 2 listeners contact me recently, and tell me their experiences, and one was an entity that appeared to him after he had listened to a show. I think it was Nick Redfern talking about black-eyed kids, and the entity said to him, "You've learned too much about the black-eyed demons," and then disappeared. He said it got into his face and disappeared, and where he woke up from a dream. I forget. It's on an upcoming Strange Familiars, the interview.
Okay.
And then another one, the guy, and he didn't want to be interviewed, but he said that something appeared to him very recently and said, "Do you want to know the truth about?" I think about UFOs or something like this, about this contact, and he said he said no. He said he wasn't ready, and it just went away. So
that sounds like something straight out of contactee literature. Do you want to know the truth about UFOs?
Well, I and this is a side road, but I'm half wondering if we're not in a new age of contact here lately, just from the number of weird experiences that are headed my way, just from listeners and my own experiences and so forth. But that's another show.
Well, there's that, but there's also that this stuff is being talked about more. People are more comfortable coming forth with their stories.
Right. And that's what Ren said, because I kind of put that theory out there, and Ren said, well, no, I think it's just people are more, more comfortable talking about it. So maybe, I'll certainly allow for that.
Also, the more you focus on it, the more likely it is to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And change.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened in this story. Maybe somehow it was stopping him from seeing the burglars.
I don't know if have you paid attention much to this? I think it's a relatively new phenomenon. They're talking about Glimmer Man.
Yeah, I heard you talk about it on one of your shows.
Yeah, and there have been people who've talked about this, and there's some ideas if it's like military tech. Like people are able to do that.
Okay.
To do that predator thing.
The predator thing, yeah.
Yeah. And,
is it like Camelio?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And it almost makes me think of something like that, like because like it's somebody using that kind of tech or something. But I don't know. It's really weird.
It's not a bad thought. And I'm sure that tech has been around for a while. I mean, the Camelio stuff goes back to the early 2000s. Was it mid 2000s, Cherylee? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I
know it was a while.
Been a while.
Back.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, there's some weird reports of this Glimmerman stuff where people are like, just sitting on a gazebo, and it looks like a guy comes up out of the woods and just kind of sits next to him, but they can only see this like, kind of glimmery shape and stuff. It's just weird stuff.
And that's, there have been encounters of that in the woods and in areas like that. I mean, Steph Young had a few stories about it that people reported.
And there's people who say they've seen Bigfoot kind of fade into that, like, kind of state. So, yeah, I mean, it might not be tech, or at least not our tech.
And it's also possible, he noted that the things that they didn't take a lot of things that they could have, but they took things like pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you take someone's pictures?
Right. Yeah. It's almost that like odd, like collection of stuff, that makes you think of the weird, like Men in Black encounters and stuff where they're like wrapping up Jello in their handkerchiefs,
Right.
In their pocket.
So that one was from last year, I think. So that's not too long. Was that last year? Helps if I can find it. No, 2017. So that was a couple of years old. This one, however, is from this month. And this is Aldo, and Aldo has talked about this on the Facebook page. And he says, my stories are odd, if not terribly exciting. The first involved disappearing objects. I need to preface this by telling you I have lived alone for more than 30 years, and I rarely have visitors, and even when I do, my apartment is small, and I always have them in plain view the whole time. In retrospect, this started happening many years ago, but I can't really say definitively in the beginning if it was just that I was misplacing or lending things and then forgetting. But in recent years, things have gotten more definitively weird. The disappearances usually involve items of clothing and many times favorite items. A pointed example is a few months ago when one shoe of a favorite pair disappeared. I turned the apartment upside down looking for it to no avail. Then, a few weeks later, suddenly the other shoe was back in the closet right where it should have been all along. Another time, a favorite pair of jeans that I had recently bought disappeared from my closet. I had only worn the jeans once and they had not been washed. The reason this is significant is because I live in a condo with a communal laundry room, and it could be said that they were stolen from the washer or dryer. There are several more examples, but you get the gist. I must tell you, I am a very frequent clothes shopper. It's pretty much an addiction, so the potential meaning there is not lost on me.
Is this a man or a woman?
Man.
Yeah, well, apart from the fact that there was a serial killer who used to steal people's clothing and go in and out of, yeah, yes, that's why I asked.
Did he bring it back?
That I don't believe he brought it back, but that was, I mean, there was a case of a serial killer that would break into the women's homes because he would like stalk them for long periods of time before he'd hurt them. But
now,
yeah.
Aldo has Aldo, I think it's Aldo, has posted about this on the Facebook group, asking if other people have had similar experiences. And it is, I mean, apports are not, they're a thing that happen. And it connects to poltergeists. And you've had them, Cherylee, right?
Oh, yeah. And it kind of makes me wonder that it's clothing that's disappearing. And he said he has an addiction to buying clothing. So he's very focused on clothing. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense that would be what is disappearing.
He has a couple other weird things that have happened. On only one occasion, I also experienced a sort of automatic writing, and I remember him posting this to the Facebook group too, if I'm remembering correctly. He said, I used to have a job where I worked in the field a lot and had a government-issued vehicle. I kept a logbook of my daily activities. One day, I stopped at a convenience store for like 15 minutes. The car was locked. There was nobody else with me, and I had the only key. When I returned to the car, there was something written in my logbook that I had not written. It was the letter S and the less than sign. They were written in several colors, including reds and yellows, that seemed to blend into one another. The only writing instruments I had in the car were black or blue pens. At the time, I was having severe issues with insomnia, so it could definitely be interpreted, if placed in order, as a suggestion to sleep less, that is, less than S. At the time, I was reading a book about insomnia, which included cognitive behavioral therapy that included suggestions to not worry about the amount of sleep in the beginning and to literally sleep less. And the fact that he makes that connection, I don't know if it's automatic writing, but it could, that would also count sort of as an apport. It's just ink that's doing the apportation.
Yeah. I don't know if I would count it as an apport, but I would certainly think that clearly, he may be connecting to something other.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, all of these kind of phenomena, it's like you're connecting to something other and it just manifests in different ways. And, like with the apports. And it's like, geez, if you're going to communicate with somebody who has an addiction or obsession with clothing, steal the clothing.
But it could also be part of him trying to communicate with himself.
Yes. Yeah.
And the last item is a small one, easier to dismiss, except for one small detail. For many months, I would hear a soft beeping noise in my bed when I went to bed at night. The noise would only occur when I pulled the sheet over my head, which is how I typically sleep, and instantly stop when I uncovered myself. This is the weird detail. After I went on a hiking vacation in the Adirondacks, the noise stopped. There are only a couple items in my bedroom that make noise, the air purifier, which is basically a fan, and my CPAP machine. These are night items you would expect to stop producing noise just because I uncover myself. I got nothing on that one.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of that.
Yeah. No, that doesn't mean, I mean, my husband has a CPAP. Well aware of the noises they make, and you're right, no, it wouldn't stop just because you got up.
Right. So that one's just odd. Like, I have no idea on that last one. It's interesting. But I suspect a lot of this is coming from him, just in a mild sort of form.
Yeah.
Well, and it could be that, like, maybe he was going from, like, the hypnagogic state, well, where he was kind of half asleep there and he was hearing things. And then when he gets up, he's not kind of in that state of being enough to continue hearing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you're in that kind of partial dream state, because a lot of people are more open to seeing ghosts and things when they're just at that particular, just that boundary between being awake and asleep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it could be that once he got out of that state of mind, that he stopped having the experience. So that when he was getting up, he was no longer sort of right in that sweet spot where he could experience the noise.
All right. The next one here is from Brendan. And this is another one from 2017 that I never got to. And they said, most of the odd things that have happened in my life are things that I can find reasonable explanations for. For instance, when my parents brought home an NES when I was a kid, I played it so much one night that I woke my parents up convinced that someone was in the living room playing Super Mario Brothers. Another time as a child, I was in my room when I heard laughter coming from behind me, but it sounded a lot like a character on a show I was watching, so it could have been a trick of the mind. And I think I've talked about this before. The last live Ghost Hunters thing they did on a Halloween, there was stuff that Grant was very obviously faking.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things was they would walk past this doorway and they would hear this voice. And I said, man, the voice sounds like it's a recorder. Like, it doesn't even sound creepy. It literally just sounds like a recorder triggering. And like later that night, I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking about this. And I'm like, man, why would you do something so obvious? And I think I had fallen asleep. And when I woke up at some point, and that same voice came from my closet and did it like 2 or 3 times. And I just kind of looked at the closet. I'm like, okay, point well made. Weird things can sound like anything,
Yeah.
And then I went back to sleep because, it should have creeped me the hell out. And later I thought, well, that was really creepy. I'm glad I just went back to sleep, So, it may not have been a trick of his mind. It could have been something trying to communicate. Who knows? It says, though my mom, who is not one to claim to see angels and demons everywhere, did say she had an odd experience. One night she had wanted some time alone, so my dad took me and my siblings to see a movie. When we came home, she claimed she heard a loud noise in the hallway. She was in the kitchen on the computer and assumed it must be nothing. A few moments later, she said someone whispered her name into her ear with enough force to cause her hair to blow. I also had the one incident I've never come up with an explanation for after all these years. When I was young, my grandparents lived out on Long Island, New York. We would go visit them a couple of times a year. This was on one of those trips. At the time, I connected this event to my grandmother's deep interest in astrology and the room my brother and I shared being the one she kept all her books on the subject in. One night, I decided to go to bed early. The only light in the room was a small lamp that you had to walk across the room to turn on and off. I turned it off, got into bed, the door was closed, and a minute after I turned on my side, the light came back on. I turned over to see the room was empty. I didn't think a lot of it, but was creeped out, so I left and didn't come back until later when my brother went to bed. The light was still on when we entered the room, but nothing else odd happened that night. The next morning, my brother got up first, so I was laying in bed when I noticed the closed door open. And when I noticed the closed door open enough to see that nobody was there, then close and latch. This was strange, as there was no window open, which could cause a draft, and I had never seen the door do that before or since. There are also a couple of things which were probably hypnagogic hallucinations, but creepy still. One, when I first moved away from home, I was renting a room, and one night I could have sworn I felt something kick the bed. I opened my eyes to see a shadowy figure step back into the corner of the room. I stared for a moment, but didn't see anything else. I knew nobody could really be there. I had things in that corner in such a way that nobody could stand there without knocking stuff over and making noise. About a year later, I had moved into a house owned by a friend to rent the upstairs. She swore the house was haunted and that she heard and saw things. She claimed to have heard footsteps on the metal staircase to the upstairs and sounds of people walking around when she was alone, and a man in a hunting outfit often appeared around the house. I didn't hear anything strange and didn't see anything until one night. I was having a series of strange dreams leading up to it, and that night in particular, I had been having a vivid dream before I woke up to see a man standing next to my bed. He was wearing a hunting outfit, green and orange, wearing a hat, but his face was obscured. In my half-awake state, my first reaction was to ask, "Who are you?" before reaching to turn on the light next to my bed. When the light came on, the room was empty. Even at the time, I tried to shrug it off as just a waking dream, but I ended up sleeping in the car the rest of the night. It was the only time I've had such a vivid experience that wasn't clearly sleep paralysis, so I was pretty creeped out. I have not experienced anything of a note since then.
I have a million questions about this Mr. Hunter man.
Yeah, you're thinking flannel man, aren't you?
I'm thinking it comes close. Was there plaid involved?
Well, he says hunting outfit, green and orange. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's close. It's definitely close.
Yeah, and I have to say, not every sort of thing that seems like flannel man is 100% wearing, plaid. By far, most are, but it seems like there's some, and definitely not always red plaid. Like 95% probably red and black checked or plaid, but I've gotten some green and yellow plaids as well.
And some of the other stuff, like the lights turning on and off and the door opening and closing, seem like basic haunting / poltergeist type of stuff.
Yeah, I have to say, at least it's nice that the lights came on, because it's much scarier when they turn off.
Yes.
I wonder, I heard so I've been collecting, just as a side question, everybody that comes on Strange Familiars, I've just been asking, have you had sleep paralysis? And, along with whatever other encounters, and no matter what they're reporting, Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, whatever it is, just out of curiosity. And overwhelmingly, the answer's been yes. Separate from these other events, they've had sleep paralysis. But that said, someone wrote me and said, I haven't checked the statistics, but they said it seems like, everyone tends to have sleep paralysis, once or twice in their life. So it's very common. So maybe it's not a thing. But I wonder how often people have what could be interpreted as poltergeist events that are just one-off things. You know what I mean? That just happen once or twice, and they don't make note of them, and then they go away.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also can be environment. It could be being around certain people. I had a friend when anytime she stayed here, there was odd poltergeist stuff. And not that I don't already have the occasional outburst of poltergeist stuff, but it was very specific things would happen when she was here, like the television going crazy. And it never did it when she wasn't here. And she doesn't have poltergeist stuff going on.
So it's just the combination of either you and her, or
right,
you and her in your place, or whatever the combination is.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors to this stuff, and it's hard to narrow them down to just one. I do think after doing the series we did on sleep paralysis, that there is something more to sleep paralysis than just than just being in a dream you can't wake up from.
Yeah. I think it feels like it's maybe a side effect of paranormal stuff as opposed to an explanation for it. And I think I stole that from Josh. So
it may also be that it's because it's an altered state of consciousness. You may, in some cases, actually be connecting with something.
True. Yeah.
Cherylee, go ahead.
Well, sorry. What I was going to say is it's sort of, when you get groups of scientists trying to study these things, it always amazes me that they think it's that they can isolate themselves from the phenomenon when they're doing it. And I don't think you can. And that's why it's constantly changing, because look at Skinwalker Ranch. If they wanted everything to stay the same and have some kind of consistency, they needed to keep the very same people there doing the very same things every day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you switch a different person in there, well, that just changes the recipe. And it's going to behave differently or not do anything at all.
That's I had not really thought about that, but you're totally right.
Because look at the number of researchers that went up there, plus they had security people.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why we can't get consistent phenomena here to study. Well, there's there's part of the reason.
Have you had sleep paralysis?
I haven't. I actually have the opposite problem. I'm one of those people who moves around when they're asleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's weird that you've had so much weird stuff happen and no sleep paralysis, but then again, you fall out of your body. So
yeah. No, sleepwalking is the thing in this house.
Yeah. All right. So this next one, this is a partial recap. He says, first, you read 2 of my events on your show. My name is Kevin Quist. The first was when my girlfriend was backing out of the driveway and sees me and sees someone else in my house. You and your guest, I can't remember if it was you, Tim, or if it was, I don't remember who did that show with me, had a couple of questions. And he says, 1, she saw me in my doorway, and that was me. And what she saw in the window, I have no idea. So basically, when she was backing out, she saw him in the doorway, and she also saw someone standing in the house, and there was no one there. And Ren must have been a part of this, because he says, I have no idea what bilocation is, but I will dig into it, because that was, I think, what Ren suggested was happening. Cherylee, were you in on this one too? Doesn't sound familiar?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar to me either. But
he says, yes, I've always had things go bump in the night around me, and crap is always moving around me. Stuff falling off the counter when it was laying flat and stable in the middle of the counter. I just got used to it, whatever. If I have a spirit, it's not hostile, probably best described as a Casper type. But
I think I do remember this now, the Casper.
And well, I don't think he called it a Casper before.
Oh, okay.
He had that one. He had a couple other things, like he followed someone into the bathroom at work and there was no one in the bathroom.
Oh, I do remember that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But bilocation, for anyone, Cherylee, do you want to explain bilocation?
Well, bilocation is basically when you are seen in 2 places at once.
Right.
And that you have some awareness. Well, the person doesn't always, but they can have actually kind of an awareness of both places. I mean, I'm trying to think of the name. Famous psychic that did a lot of work in New York City, not Ingo Swann. Alex Tannis.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
he did experiments with bilocation, and he was actually both aware of himself and his body, and aware of his sort of spirit body that was actually, I think, in some cases seen elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. If I remember one of the stories, I forget who I had on who was talking about him. I know I could see the guy's face, but I can't remember his name because he did
was
the ghost.
Was it Cal Cooper?
Yes, it was. Thank you. It was Cal Cooper who was talking about him, and said that at one point, like, he was able to bilocate to someplace quite far away, and he like knocked on the guy's door, came in, had tea with him and stuff, and then left, and he never left his place in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually some videos on YouTube of some of the experiments that he did, where he was hooked up to an EEG and he would try and leave his body and go to another room and affect a sensor, as well as look at what what was there so he could come back and say, okay, this is what I saw, and I tried to affect it somehow. And in some cases, yeah, it was affected.
Huh.
Yeah.
I think I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did some fascinating stuff. So that's by location. So the idea being that he may have been both in the living room and the door at the same time, even if he wasn't aware of it.
Bilocation is also one of the acceptable miracles. Like, you have to have a certain number of miracles if you're going to be sainted by the Catholic Church.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Bilocation is one of the acceptable miracles. You can check that off if you've bilocated.
And he says, another short one if you want it. This happened maybe back in 2008. I'm standing in the bathroom and I see someone go running super fast through the hallway into the end bedroom. It freaked me out because if my wife was running like that, something went wrong. And now that I think about it, I did not hear feet pounding hard on the wood floors, which was odd. I run into the bedroom and nothing. I look around and find my wife and 3 boys, 6, 7, and 10 years old, on the front porch eating a popsicles. I asked her what was wrong. She was really puzzled, and she said she and the boys had been out there for at least 15 minutes. No idea what that was about. My wife said she saw someone in the door of our bedroom one morning. She woke up, rolled over, and there was a guy standing in the door. She said she sat up quickly and never took her eyes off of him. She said he smiled at her and just disappeared. She said other than the shock of seeing a strange man in her house, she said that she got the feeling that he only meant to protect her. She said he gave her the same feeling of protection that her grandpa gave her. She said she had no idea who he was, didn't recognize him from anywhere, and speculates it was the previous owner of the house who died of a heart attack in the living room. He was supposed to be a great guy, a gentle giant, but we never met him, so we couldn't ID him if we had to. And the last micro story, we have a haunted corner in the basement. The area in our basement under the kitchen, everyone calls the haunted corner. I have always had an uncomfortable feeling in that corner. Everyone does. I have had people who don't believe in ghosts, who think the stuff is all garbage, and they will openly mock you if you mention a ghost. Go down there, walk into that area, and can't be there for more than 5 minutes and have to come back upstairs and are literally shaking. You say, what's wrong with you? And they say, I don't know. I'm just feeling scared and sad. We had plans to put a bathroom in that part of the basement, but no one wants it there. That area has the water meter in it and a gas main. We have had the water meter checked for stray voltage. I've had the basement checked for everything from stray voltage to radon, and there's nothing. And the rest of the basement is perfectly fine with no issues.
Yeah, I lived in a house that had like a haunted room.
Huh.
And I mean, this was when I was quite young. It was like the first house that I had with my first husband. And he was an infantry soldier. And when we'd have parties there, that was kind of the spare bedroom. And it was sort of a joke. If somebody was too drunk to drive home, we'd say, oh, go sleep in the spare bedroom. It's fine. And then we'd wait for them to like come out screaming in the middle of the night and laugh, which is, I mean, when you're 20, things are funny. But
no, that's still funny.
But, and whatever there was about that room, it hated men. Women could sleep in there, not a problem.
I remember you mentioning this. Yeah.
That room did not like men.
Huh.
Yeah.
And the other stuff, I mean, it seems like typical poltergeist / haunting type of stuff. I mean, it might be a spirit. It might be coming from him in some way.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and at least it's not scary. And maybe that's because he doesn't approach it as being scary. Maybe because he's not scared of it, it's not scary to him. All right. So this one, okay, this is a light one. This is interesting. And he had listened to, his name is Philip. He listened to Natalie's paranormal experiences back on the July 12th, 2018 show. And Natalie had seen this ball of light, and it was very much like what he has witnessed. He said, I wish I would have documented it, but I've never been the type to keep a journal. I don't remember the exact date, but I know it was sometime in the autumn of either 2009 or 2010. I know this because I remember watching college football at the time. It was a primetime evening game. My family had already gone to bed. To help paint a picture of the scene, it was about 10:30, and I was sitting in our roughly 14 by 18 living room, which had 17-foot ceilings and was open to the second floor bedrooms above. Across the room from the bedrooms, there were 2 rows of windows, one on top of the other, with the top header height at about 13 feet. The TV was at the far end of the room, about 14 to 15 feet from where I was sitting. Then it just appeared out of nowhere. It was a green ball of light in the middle of my freaking living room. I just froze and stared at the thing. It was about 4 to 5 feet in diameter, and the center of it hovered about 7 feet off the floor between me and the TV. It really didn't seem to make a sound. Maybe a very, very soft hum, but I don't know for sure. The ball was stationary in that it wasn't moving across the room nor up and down, but the brilliant green laser-like light that made up the ball was twisting and turning, rotating and moving inside the ball itself from one side to the other. There was a very slight fog that was around it and inside the ball that lit it up faintly from the green laser light itself. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I don't know if it was because it scared the crap out of me because it seemed to have an electrical nature to it. It lasted for about 30 seconds and then it just disappeared. As I was sitting there looking at it, about 10 seconds into the appearance, I initially couldn't tell whether it was originating from my living room or being projected into the living room from someone outside with some sort of device. I slowly turned my head to see that the bottom row of windows had the blinds shut. The top row of windows showed evidence of light on the glass, head, jamb, or sills. So I slowly turned my head back to Sarah where I was thinking that it was originating from inside the room. 2 other reasons I didn't think it was being projected is someone would have been very high up in the trees to get the green light through the second row of windows, and the laser light didn't show up on the wall opposite the windows. It was clearly in the middle of the room. 2 questions obviously come to my mind. What the hell was it, and why was it in my living room? To this day, I still have no idea what it was. I've searched endlessly online, but found nothing similar to what I saw. Recently, the one thing I thought that I could loosely resemble it to is the aurora borealis. The fog had that color and consistency to it, but it doesn't explain the crazy laser light show that was inside the ball. As to why it was in my living room, I figure it was either there for me to personally witness or it had something to do with that space. It was a new house, and we built that about 5 years earlier in a new neighborhood that was built on a golf course that was 80 to 90 years old. It probably just had something to do with the space. Then I heard your show with Natalie, and finally someone with a similar experience. She describes it at the 30-minute mark of your show. If we were to make a Venn diagram of the characteristics of our experiences, the similar words or concepts would be night, green, light, hover, not moving laterally or up and down, and autumn, Halloween, in her experience. The main difference is that she saw it in the woods and I saw it in my living room. Thank you for collecting and sharing these stories. It helps to validate and explain experiences that people have. And that is exactly what we're trying to do. Make people understand that they're probably not crazy. These things are really experienced by a great number of people.
We had another person who was on both of our shows. The reason I know this is you had read her account, and she had seen an orb in her basement when she was young. And she even had friends over to see it. They would put a tent up in the basement and look at this orb.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I know that she was on both of our shows is you had read her account, then she came on Strange and Familiars, and she's saying this account, telling me this account, and I thought, I've heard this before. And what I thought her friend had come on and told me the story before. And she's like, wow, that would be amazing, because she had her friend in her tent, and then at some point I put it together. I was like, wait a minute. This was on Where Did the Road Go as well. But in any case, she reported something very similar. I think it was a green orb, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember. And you know what's funny about that? As I was going through stories, I went, all right, let me go down through some of these ones I may have missed. I started reading that story. I didn't pull it out of the folder because I've been putting them in a done folder so I know which ones we've gone over. Right. And I started reading going, oh, this is really interesting. We did this one already. This is the lights in the basement with the tent. Because we did it in one of the light shows.
Yes, that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of?
What?
There was a case that was, and I think this one was investigated by Lloyd Auerbach a number of years ago, where there was a family who had this ghost. I think her name was Lois in the house. And everybody in the family had kind of seen the ghost, but there was the little boy in the house. He really developed a relationship with this ghost. I mean, she would help him with his homework, give him advice, about, how to do things at school. And the parents weren't concerned that the ghost was bad. They were just concerned about, is it okay for our kid to be talking to a ghost? Is this psychologically okay? So anyway, when they investigated this case, and it was a really neat case, like Lois was able to answer a lot of questions through the little boy. Like the little boy was kind of talking for her, and because he could see her and hear her, and they were able to actually confirm a lot about the information that this little boy, who he couldn't have, it didn't make sense that he would have known the things that she was telling him. But one of the questions was, so is this really how you look? Like, because I mean, he sees you as a woman, and sometimes a woman of various ages. Like, Lois could look quite young or quite old, depending on how she was kind of thinking of herself. And they asked, so what do you really look like? Like, what's really there? And she described herself basically as a ball of light.
And
okay. And that's kind of, and that's what I always think of, is that, it's that maybe our spirits are just these intelligent balls of light.
Well, and you look at the idea that there could be plasma intelligences. Andrew Collins makes a good case for that in his Light Quest book, talking about how UFOs may just be plasma intelligences. This sounds like plasma, I mean, right down to the electrical elements. I mean, I think I said that when Natalie was on. It sounds like you're seeing a ball of plasma, like ball lightning, but not ball lightning, because ball lightning can have a much more extreme effect on its environment.
Yeah.
And why it showed up, who knows? There could be any number of reasons why it showed up. I don't know if he had any other experiences. It sounds like this is the one that stands out, if nothing else. But balls of light are so common in these experiences. That's why we ended up doing like 3 or 4 shows on light phenomena, because it's one of the common factors you find across paranormal experiences. And as he put it, the difference between him and Natalie's experiences, he saw it in his house and she saw it in the woods. And that's one of those things I've said for so long, that like, if someone sees a light in the sky, it's a UFO. If they see it in the woods, it's Bigfoot. If they see it in a house, it's a ghost. And it's like, but it's all a light.
Right.
We start with, it's a light, and it's like, and then people put their camouflage onto it. And this, he just saw as a light. And the internal side of it made me think of, what are those balls you put your hands on? They make your hands stand up and they shoot the lightning out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They're static.
Yeah. I don't know what they're called, but that's what it made me think of. So, I mean, I don't have a good answer for him as to what it was. Fascinating. I'll call it fascinating. That's what it was.
Yeah, and I wonder if he just got a better, closer look at whatever these orbs are that everybody sees, but they're seeing them far away, so they don't get to see the dancing lights inside of them or whatever.
Right.
However he was describing it.
And maybe it was a fluke. Maybe it was trying to tell him something. It's kind of hard to say. Anything else on that?
Only that I can tell you, there are multiple traditions, both modern and from First Nations people, that associate balls of light with Bigfoot. I'm running into that a lot with the book I'm writing with Josh, and there's, like I said, there's modern people that are saying Bigfoot, takes the form of these balls of light, and they go inside trees during the day, and they come out at night as Bigfoot. It's very bizarre stuff, but these balls of light are involved in this.
Cherylee, anything else?
I can't really think of anything else. I mean, certainly seeing lights is not unique.
No, but I think it's the size and the color and such of this one that really stands out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it doesn't make you crazy because you saw light.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I hope not.
All right, so let's see if we can get through these last 2 here that I had marked out. This one, So this comes from Stevie. And they said, I always hesitate telling this story as a paranormal one because it sounds like a hypnagogic hallucination. Many years ago, I was visiting home from college, and I stayed over at my dad's. He was living with a girlfriend at the time. She had kids from a previous relationship, but they were staying with their dad that weekend, so I was able to stay in their room that night. The room was relatively clean, maybe a few toys on the floor, but I made sure to clear the space around the air mattress. I have an overactive bladder, so it's important I have a path to the bathroom. So right after turning off the lights and getting into bed, I rolled to the side facing the bedroom door, and I saw what looked like a toy robot walking on the floor towards me. Again, it was an air mattress, so I was on the floor, and the toy was eye level with me. It was about a foot high, and it moved like the ones that have legs and take really slow, awkward steps. It was dark, and I didn't have my glasses on, so when I say toy robot, it's an approximation. I didn't put my glasses back on to inspect further because I had left them on the dresser on the other side of the room. Its movement was very wooden, mechanical, like a toy robot. There were some tiny red lights on it, like a toy robot would have, and it even made that crude noise you hear when cheap RC toys and trucks move, so I thought it was a toy robot. Made sense because I was in a kid's room. There were other toys around, and all the evidence pointed to that. However, I didn't actually see a toy robot. I saw the vague outline of one in the dark, and my brain probably helped fill that in. I heard the noise. It seemed to come closer to me based on that noise and what I could make out of its movement. Seeing the blinking red lights helped me better sense its outline and movement in the dark. They seemed to be located where a toy robot's head would be. I think there were two, like eyes or antenna. Then it fell forward. I have trouble describing this final part because there was no thud, but it definitely appeared to fall face first about a foot or two away from the mattress. The room was carpeted, but there would have been some noise from it falling. There wasn't. I just saw it fall forward, the noise stopped, and saw no more little red lights. It's almost like it literally fell through the floor and disappeared. Without the red lights in the room, it was completely dark again. It's worth mentioning my hometown is very small, around 8,000 people, so it gets very dark. It's not the kind of dark you get in a city with lots of light pollution. Without the red lights, the room was completely dark. Oh, I just read that part. Because it was so dark, I just assumed it had fallen down and was laying on the floor close to me, even though I couldn't actually see it there. This all happened very fast. It probably lasted 2 seconds. I didn't check to see. I brushed it off and closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, there was no robot. Nobody had come into the room before me to clean up or anything. My dad's girlfriend said her kids didn't have a robot anyway. It dawned on me then that it was weird that I assumed it was a physical toy robot last night, but I didn't question where it had come from. It's weird that it would have come on by itself, sure, but that's not unheard of. How would it have gotten so close to me so suddenly? I think I'd assumed that it had just been standing there deactivated and then somehow walked a little and then fell over because carpets are unsteady for these toys, but no toy robot had been standing close to the mattress when I turned off the light. One of the reasons I doubt it was a hallucination is because I'm an insomniac. I don't fall asleep fast, especially in unfamiliar surroundings. I wasn't on the verge of sleep. This happened right after I laid down. It was also perfectly vivid, not dreamlike at all. It takes a really long time for me to feel drifty, and I hadn't gotten to that point. As mundane as toy robot sighting seems, it really does seem like I saw a phantom toy robot. Or maybe it more properly belongs to a more general strange lights encounter category, and my brain only filled in the blanks to come up with a toy robot. Toy robot is a screen memory, perhaps. I just don't know. I just know it was very brief, very odd little thing that happened to me once. And I like the fact that they're pointing out that mainly what they saw was lights.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're probably onto that. What they probably experienced is some kind of odd light phenomena.
I do like the idea of a phantom toy robot, though. I mean, just
yeah, so do I.
It's aesthetically pleasing, I think. You know.
Well, and being a children's room, you know, although they said that there had been no toy robots, but you know, there's always the idea of that the memory of the room, like you know that.
Right, or was there a toy robot in the future there?
Well, that's true too. Yeah, you're right. That maybe someday there will be that toy robot. She's seeing a future memory of the room.
There you go. I don't know if it was a he or a she. Stevie could go either way. But that's an interesting story. Lights, the lights, again, lights.
Yeah.
The most common factor in all of these things tend to be lights.
Yeah.
They're not in everything, but they're there so much.
Oh yeah.
And I like what Ren had said at one point, that maybe the lights are like the first, that you see the lights before they've been able to create a camouflage around them, whether we're creating that camouflage or they are. It's like the initiation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and like, I think maybe some people are more sensitive to seeing those things. Like, when I got tested at Laurentian University, they put me in an isolation room that was dark. And so there's no EMF because it's like a big Faraday cage and it's sealed up. It's like being inside a refrigerator. And I mean, I always see light. Like I never don't see light. So, and with the EEG, they said that even though I was in the dark room, my brain was still acting like I was seeing light.
Now, when you say you always see light, is it just that, like when you close your eyes, it's not dark, or are you actually seeing lights?
I always see lights around things.
Oh, around things. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even just in the room. I mean, and they did one experiment with me where they were controlling they had like a machine to create specific EMF frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had me telling them what colors I was seeing of light. And they said that the colors I was naming corresponded to very specific frequencies. Again, which suggesting that I'm seeing something that's real.
Right.
It's not just my imagination that I'm seeing lights. It's my brain is acting like I'm seeing lights, and I'm picking out specific colors without knowing what frequencies they're turning it to because they don't tell you.
I've seen lots of, smaller lights and things like that, but sometimes when I close my eyes, when I try to go to sleep, I feel like the lights are on in the room.
Yeah.
Like everything's bright. And sometimes I'll even open my eyes going, because sometimes the light by my bed will come on its own. And I'll just be like, it's damn light. No, everything's dark. Okay. Sometimes it's to the point where it feels like someone's shining a spotlight on me. It'll be so bright with my eyes closed. And then other times it doesn't do it.
Yeah, see, I'm just always seeing light.
Huh. All right. One more for today. This one comes from Rachel. And she says, the recent episode regarding I'm going to say it wrong again, Vardoger experiences caught one of my listeners in Sweden has tried to sound this out for me in comments, and I'm sure I'm still screwing it up. But Vardoger experiences caught my attention as I have two examples of this happening in my life, and until recently, I had never heard of this happening to another person outside of legends. I encountered a mention of the phenomena when I was researching something in high school, but the term I came up with was a fetch, which is a spirit from Irish folklore that is sometimes referred to as the Irish doppelganger. The first incident occurred when I was around 13 or 14. I should mention that this is around the time poltergeist type activity began in the house, who we attributed to a ghost affectionately called Bill. Bill is his own unusual story, so I will not discuss him here. I also began regular sleepwalking episodes around that time when I had no prior history of it. My father and I were watching TV in the living room on the weekend. My mother was due home in about an hour. Both of us clearly heard someone enter the basement from the garage, no sounds of the garage door, walk up the basement stairs, open the door to the kitchen, and then step back onto the stairs. After my dad checked that I had also heard that, he got up to check and make sure no one had entered the house and found no sign of disturbance. I'm an only child, so unless the cat learned to open the door, we have no explanation for that noise. The second incident occurred while I was in college. It was again the weekend, somewhere between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. I had been up for several minutes debating on whether or not I should go back to sleep. After eventually giving up, I went downstairs to find both parents in the living room. They asked me if I'd used the bathroom right next to my bedroom. After telling them no and not understanding why I was being asked that, my dad explained that a few minutes before I left the bedroom, they heard the toilet in that bathroom flush and the water in the sink run. They thought it was me until they heard my bedroom door open. The door is very loud because it would stick. However, Even though I had been awake for a while, I had never heard anyone in the bathroom. They just joked I must have been sleepwalking again and laughed it off. Both incidents stick out so vividly because they seemed so out of place. I don't know if this is important or not, but my dad has experienced deja vu multiple times in his life, but neither my mother or I have. My father and I are also supposedly descendants of the White Lady of Carew Castle in Wales. Since that particular ghost is said to be a residual haunting, it's just seems to be a weird coincidence with everything else. I feel like this is somebody I should contact because she seems to have some more stuff going on there that might be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's quite a Vardoger experience because the Vardoger seems to be sort of a preemptive of something that you're going to hear. This almost seems like poltergeist activity.
Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't like she went into the bathroom right after
Right.
they heard it. Yeah.
Or that her mother came home 10 minutes after and made the same exact noises.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this qualifies as Vardoger experiences. But it definitely could qualify as a poltergeist experience. Just with sounds. And clearly the poltergeist was kind enough to wash its hands afterwards.
Not like that dirty spirit from that other messy house.
Right, exactly. This was the clean poltergeist. But yeah, those were some interesting stories. I'll see if she will share some more with us.
Yes,
all right.
I'm particularly interested in this White Lady story.
Ah, yes. The White Lady of Carew Castle in Wales. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure if we did a Google search, we'd find a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think that is all we're going to be able to squeeze in for this show. Please continue to send your weird experiences. It doesn't have to be something like what we've covered. You know, if you've had something odd happen to you that you think might have been paranormal or just out of the ordinary, stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com is the place to send them, because that way they're in one place and I have a better chance of seeing them and actually responding to them. I'm trying to catch up with all the stories people have sent me over the last 6 years that I haven't responded to. So hopefully I'm going to get through, all of them eventually, because there's some really fascinating stuff in there. Yeah. So thank you for everyone who's willing to share your stories. Because it's not only interesting, it helps us accumulate data and maybe get the slightest hint of what might be going on, but it also helps other people out there who have had these experiences realize that they're not alone. Like the guy with the green light, finding Natalie's experience. I mean, was it a guy or a girl? Now I don't remember. I think it was a guy. Finding that's important, because now he at least has something there that he has seen, that someone else has had that experience. And the more people talk about this, the better. So, Tim?
Yes.
Where can people find you?
Strangefamiliars.com. All the contact information goes to me. You can also find the podcast there or wherever you listen to podcasts. And my books are on Amazon, Timothy Renner.
All right. And Cherylee is unavailable for contact.
That's right.
But you can contact us and we can pass stuff along to her.
Yeah, I'm pretty much an electronic hermit, so I don't even have like a phone. So.
Oh, that's right. You blow them up anyway.
Yeah.
And we have a Reddit page. It's not linked on wheredidtheroadgo.com yet, but it's reddit.com/r/wheredidtheroadgo. So if you want to contribute there and get our conversations going a little more in there. It seems like there was something else I was going to say, and now I don't remember what it was. Steph Young, as I said, will be on next week, unless something else happens, but I don't foresee that. And I want to emphasize that Steph was perfectly willing to do the show despite being under the weather. I was the one that told her we should do it next week because I didn't want to, have her on while she was sick. That didn't, better that she rest and come on 100% than do it like that. So, all right. I thank both of you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
Where Did the Road Go wouldn't be what it is without the support of our Patreons. In particular, those pledging $10 or more a month. Ellison Cook, Super Inframan, UFO Weekly News, Tim, Andy McNamara, Lindsay Jackson K, Charles R. Beauregard, Jennifer Campbell, Craig Cisternos, Eric Citron, Jose A., Kevin, Scott Morris Everett, Sean Cosgrove, Robert Groom, Roland Belstadt, Janet Runyon, Riker and Stark, John Rutledge Foster III, Christopher Vaughn, Mike McGuire, Ben Crow, American Rambler, Carla Mahoney, John Eddy, Chris, Mark Brady, Nate Seriah, William Lovelace, Patricia Giaquinta, Kevin Schreck, Paul Buscini, and Alfred Tuttle. Thank you all so much. All right, once again, get a hold of us at stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com, and we can either bring you on or discuss your story like we did tonight. I hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, we will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.